Welcome. This is Ethics Instead, and this video is directed at my fellow cop watchers, specifically those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, but really to any of them throughout the divided police states of America. How about that? I'm going to be talking some fluent legalese here, along with the first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, and just know that if you live in a different area, you're able to look at the words that are written down that are claiming to protect your quote-unquote rights and take similar perspectives from what I'm about to present. This is really directed at those cop watchers who approach the police using words like, hey, I have the right to this, I have the right to that, all I want is my Constitution, and I want to exercise my rights, and this, that, and the other. My question for you is, do rights actually exist? Or are they words that are part of a sales pitch to maintain an illusion that you have and enjoy, or should at least, some protections from armed men who are paid by the state to enforce its will? Now, if I'm wrong, man, I'm all open to that. Just please give it to me in the comments, and maybe we can have some little discussions back and forth about it. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Right. I'm just saying I find it more effective to win over the public in the court of public opinion, which is where all the power is, if we use simple logic, ethics, and observable reality of what the state is doing and what it's claiming, and the opinions that it maintains through might makes right authority and coercive threats of violence, right? So, I'm open to if anyone who disagrees. I'm not trying to force feed you a new belief system to tear down your old one, or I don't know how long you've been believing in whatever belief systems you have, but, I'm just trying to have a discussion. So without any further delay, let me get into it. First off, my sources here are the Bill of Rights Institute.org, as well as the archives.gov websites. I just have two different sources here. I've compared notes. Yes, the amendments are listed the same here, so here we go. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Okay, now I have to break this down. I can't say the whole sentence at one time. You can read the sentence. You don't need me to read it. I'm just going to translate this into legalese and actual reality, all right, and see if you agree or not. That's fine. So Congress shall make no law. All right. Now, I know this is a big one, but as far as the word law goes, do they ever write down anything and call it a law? U.S. law, state law, county law, city law? No. They're called statutes and codes. Maybe ordinances, rules, whatever, at whatever level. But they don't call them laws. Law is a generic, vague term used to encompass all rules made by all representatives of the state in this quote-unquote government that are backed by the will of who they bribe, the police, sheriffs, bailiffs, highway patrol, etc. Right? So when I see the word law, I know that it's just pointing at the arbitrary opinion of a judge in a courtroom who will decide on this law and write orders that armed men will follow. Judges are even capable of, through their machinations, taking on and taking down a president of the United States, as we've seen with the search and seizure of Trump's lawyer's office. And I'm no fan of Trump. I'm no real fan of anyone on the right or left. I'm not politically affiliated. I don't identify as Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or any label, okay? I don't need to. I don't want to be in a group that someone else can just think, I understand that group, and I'm going to mentally dismiss you because you claim to be a part of it. I'm simply coming with basic, non-controversial logic and ethics and just descriptions of actual manifested reality. Okay, so I try not to give too much detail, try to move along here, but Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Now keep in mind, can Congress make a law, quote-unquote, that makes a statute, that makes a statute, that makes a code, that makes a code, that makes a rule, that makes a rule, whatever, how many steps down the line? that then establishes a religion? I would say not. Right? If it's one step below Congress at the state or county level, a couple steps, can they establish a religion because of the laws they're relying upon that Congress made originally? Certainly not. Now, when we speak of an establishment of religion, what is the intention here? Well, it's to keep Congress, aka government, away from religion, aka belief systems backed by entities unknown because of a lack of factual evidence provided. Okay. So there's an attempt to separate church and state here. And as you've seen in the video I recently uploaded from the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court, they call it, in Fort Worth, Texas, they practice no separation of church and state. They are one and the same. And I would say the state is a church. Belief in state authority and totalitarianism is a religion, backed by all the money and all the power. And yes, I know that most of the world is run this way, but to claim that's okay is just a logical fallacy. It's an error, and it does not justify what's happening, especially the violence and chaos that comes as a result of obedience to such a religion/state. Alright, so Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. But we know they do. Now, we supposedly have these rights. This is my First Amendment right. Okay, but do you actually have it? Does it exist? Maybe this one does. Formally they haven't said the Church of England is the official church of England in so many words. Okay, let's move on. Or, they shall make no law, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So you should be able to exercise whatever religion you want. Now, if your religion doesn't believe in the authority of the state or the government, are you free to exercise that? Are you free to resist paying taxes, having licenses for everything you do, being coerced through threats of jail, having to attend hearings where if you don't, an arrest warrant is going to be issued for you by the police, armed men who think that they've got the authority to do so, dangerously uninformed, dangerously fearful of their lives? I don't think you do have the ability to freely exercise a religion that does not believe in state authority. After all, they don't have any factual evidence that connects the statutes and codes' applicability to you as an individual. Do they or do they? Oh, we'll get to that in a minute here. Continuing on, or abridging the freedom of speech. Now, if you've got freedom of speech, shouldn't you be able to speak freely without being thrown in prison? Alright, well, I can promise you from personal experience and from the experience of many others that if you say certain words in a courtroom that are perfectly respectable, perfectly calm and peaceful, and perfectly relevant, and they'll even agree that it's relevant, you can and will be thrown in jail with or without warning. Alright, I myself have been arrested off a public street just for criticizing police actions and the bribes they take, kind of making fun of them. I was thrown in jail for over, 48 hours. So I don't have this. Abridging the freedom of speech, yeah, they leave us alone in some areas, but in the real areas that can really harm them, in the court of public opinion, they don't. They get right up on it. Alright, how many journalists have the freedom to speech? Or are they coerced by their superiors who are obeying those who would desire the mainstream media to be the mouthpiece of the government position so they can control the narrative? Alright, if you control the narrative, you don't need freedom of speech. So do you have that? Just wondering. I mean, even YouTube, you're not supposed to be able to provide your service to some groups of people but not others. Right? That's been the standard, but YouTube can. Clearly it can. It'll just take your video right off. It won't just demonetize it. It'll prevent you from making any in the future. Right? Some people even make their living off YouTube, and they'll take that living away, or that portion of their income away, and face no consequences whatsoever. Alright, freedom of speech, or of the press. I think we've discussed that. Unless you want to be mainstream media, you're not really going to be respected as quote-unquote members of the press, especially when you want to film the inside of a courtroom, especially if you want to hold a judge accountable for their actions. Alright, continuing on. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. Now, generally, we kind of have that one. We can meet up in groups, but in some places they require a permit. And if you don't have their permission to meet and peaceably assemble, they'll bring in the armed men with guns to break it up. So do you have that? Sometimes, but always? And to petition the government for redress of grievances. They'll let you have a redress of grievances as long as it doesn't cost them or really interfere with their will, but is there really a redress of grievances? What if you don't like what a judge has decided in a case of yours? Family court, divorce court, with custody over children, nonviolent victimless crimes like the drug war, property taxes with asset forfeiture. Do you have a redress of grievance against a judge acting outside of due process, outside of quote-unquote law and order, right? And abusing their power wildly? I don't think you have much of anything in this First Amendment, but hey, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I just think you've got it part-time, but not always, which is inexcusable and intolerable to many of us. Let's move on to Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, obviously, the right of the people to keep and bear their arms openly is infringed. I mean, look at Almost Park, April 7th. They decided, we're going to make a local ordinance that you can no longer open carry a long gun. And the police started to enforce that by slamming somebody to the ground, including head injuries, and tasing another person. And what happened? Hundreds of people organized in a march that scared them so bad they had an emergency session and then took away that rule so that it was now again quote-unquote legal to open carry a long gun in their claimed jurisdiction of their borders they made up, that everyone else has to obey whether or not you agree with it or voted for it or any of that, right? Where I come from in Hawaii, for the last 6 years, you don't have that at all. And they'll even justify it in their publicly available police documentation as to why the Second Amendment doesn't apply to their will. They don't even let you have a gun at all or concealed carry permit at all. I mean, you can have maybe a shotgun for home defense, if you've got there okay. But if not, you can't, and it's a felony, and they'll lock you up for a long time if you get caught with it. I mean, let's talk about a well-regulated militia, right? Very few people pay lip service to that, but what is that? Well, it's a group of armed men with a well-regulated regulated militia does not mean it's got a lot of regulations to it. Don't make that connection. A regulated militia is well-armed and provisioned and maintained. The equipment it's talking about, the guns themselves. All right, keep in mind this was written 240 plus whatever some odd years ago. So a well-regulated militia is a well-equipped and maintained and trained army, more or less, being necessary to the security of a free state. They knew that if the well-regulated militia doesn't exist, the state's going to take over, as it always has and as it always will, and as it has already here. And that's why we don't enjoy a lot of these freedoms. All right, I think I've covered Amendment 2. Amendment 3. Let's switch over to this one here. No soldiers shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This is the one I think they actually most respect, but they have their own huge, massive army bases. The American military spends more money than what all other militaries combined or something like that. The top next 10 places. It's a ridiculous amount. They have all the bases. They have all their own housing. They don't need to have their soldiers in our houses, okay? Like the cold of winter is not so harmful to their cause that they need to actually use our houses as their hotel rooms for their soldiers. All right, so this one actually gets respected probably more than any other. Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Let me break this down. The right of the people, again, does this right exist today, to be secure in their persons, to be just left alone, your own individual physical body, keep your hands off of me, do not touch me. That's what that is. Houses, stay out of my home. Do not threaten it, do not come in it, do not surveil it, you will leave me alone. Papers, all the documents. We're allowed to have a life and keep documentation and papers around. You gotta run a business, you gotta make a living, okay? And effects, all the associated things that are logistically necessary to have papers and houses and persons, right? Against unreasonable searches and seizures. Now, what was unreasonable? Well, illogical. Unreasonable, it doesn't make any common sense. You've got no good reason. Do you have a definable, articulable justification or concern that a crime is being committed or is about to be committed or just has been committed? If you don't have that reasonable suspicion and you can articulate that criminal suspicion, then you cannot search and seize. You cannot detain, which is just an arrest by another word without the handcuffs. Okay? You cannot detain, you cannot arrest. This is what this quote-unquote right says. Right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Alright? Pretty simple. Shall not be violated. Now everybody goes, oh, it says that. Shall not be violated. Well, have you looked in Black's Law Dictionary? If you're not familiar with Black's Law Dictionary, you are not fluent in legalese. Lawyers know all about it. They look it up. Look up these words in Black's Law Dictionary. Shall does not mean must. It means may, as in optional. If they want to mean must, they will say must, not shall. Everyone thinks this was all written to actually protect people, but what if some of it was a hustle to maintain the power of the elitist who authored it? You know, you all think of them, oh, the founding fathers, as if they're some kind of hollowed name. These were slave owners. People, it's so easy to forget. I have no concept of what that reality would look like outside of a movie. The safety of a comfort lazy boy chair to sit in with some popcorn to enjoy. Shall not be violated just means may not be violated. Okay? And no warrants shall issue. A warrant by definition is a justified authority written on paper. And if it's not justified, it's not a warrant. Okay, so no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause. You've got a probable, a statistically likely cause of needing a reason to do these searches and seizures of persons, houses, papers, and effects. Okay, that you're violating here if you don't do it right. According to this. Probable cause, wow. Supported by oath or affirmation. Okay, oh, a judge has got to say, that's what it's been twisted into. A judge has to take an oath. Oh my gosh. An oath to who? Who's responsible if they break the oath? What happens to them if they break the oath? Oh, they have to raise their appendage, their arm, though, and make a swear that they'll support and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's meaningless. They don't do it, and there's no consequence for breaking it, so what good is the oath? Hell, I took one when I joined the military. Do you think it meant anything? No. Did anybody ever talk to me about it again? No. Was I held accountable if I were to break that? Absolutely not. Unless they define through their legalese lingo that I had, oh, then it's just, it's a flexible thing to go after who they want to go after or protect who they want to protect. But there's no rhyme or reason or universal standard that you can rely upon to save you from it. It's just words written down on paper. These things are written flexibly on purpose so that their will can be enforced no matter what their will is in an uncertain future, so that they can maintain power. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's been going on forever. This is just History 101, right? Supported by oath or affirmation, a judge, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, that was made up because in their day and time, these judges were writing arrest warrants, search and seizure permission slips, and leaving them blank. And then the cops would roll up and start filling them in. And so in order to deny that and prevent that, they said, look, ahead of time you have to know what you're looking for because of your probable cause. You have to write in and be specific. I'm searching this place, this person for these documents because of this reason, and here's a judge signing it, and if he's wrong, it's his butt on the line. It should be, but of course it's not. All right? Describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And keep in mind, these day and age, to be seized, to have your person seized, means you will comply with them. If you do not, you will die. Come with me, you're going to jail. If you resist with enough force, you're a dead man. Or you're going to be on the run as a fugitive and your whole life comes to a screeching halt. And everyone knows it. And your friends and family can endure having to answer questions about you, having their lives disrupted, put on the news. made famous in the court of public opinion, where quite often you're guilty before any presumption of innocence. Irreparable harm is done with no chance of having any remedy for that. So the fourth is huge. It's just huge. I mean, it's as big as the first and the second to me when it comes to courtrooms. I mean, without the second, you don't have the first, right? Without the first, you really don't have anything else outside of a gun. But when it comes to actually words that you have, the fourth is, to me, is right next in line. Let's go on to the fifth. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. And gosh, if you know anything about grand juries, like 99% of them are, yep, go ahead. I agree with you, Mr. Prosecutor. Indict. They're made up of members of the public, so to speak. They're all just statists who vote and support the state, though. And they just don't have to be very specific at all. They just say, hey, these are the allegations, and boom, it'll go through. Very rarely does a grand jury not indict these days. And it's been that way for a long time. All right. So people are held to answer for capital or infamous crimes because this protection via grand jury doesn't exist today. Do you have any rights under the Fifth Amendment so far? I don't think so. Comma, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia. Now, obviously, what are they talking? UCMJ here? We don't have a militia. So this isn't applicable to us today. Okay? When in actual service in time of war or public danger. Now, they just make an exception for, hey, if there's an emergencies, sometimes you're going to have to go against this in the interest of public safety because crazy things can and will happen. You know? All right, fine. But do you have any protection from this today if it goes against what a judge wants? Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Okay, now that's just saying double jeopardy. You can't charge you for the same crime twice. Canada doesn't have this protection. In Canada, they can charge you again and again and again and again and again until they get the verdict they want, I guess. That's how they roll there. If you're under their crown, quote unquote. Crowns. We're still talking crowns and it's 2018. Kings and crowns get real. Nor shall you be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. So, if someone asks you a question according to this, you don't have to answer if it's going to serve, according to them, you being a witness against yourself. Do you know why I stopped you for speeding? Is it an attempt to get you to be a witness against yourself? Well, yeah, I was kind of speeding. I mean, if he was to point a gun at you and say, answer the question, then he'd be compelling you. But it doesn't mean their training doesn't tell them to try a million ways from Sunday to get around this. But technically, when it comes down to it, this says, what every police officer has supposedly sworn an oath to protect, that you shall not be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against yourself. Now again, here's this word shall. Anytime it says shall, that actually means may, according to Black's Law Dictionary and the legalese that they use today. Look it up. Alright? To be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Another huge one. Life is, I don't want to go to your jail, so I'm not going. And they'll point a gun at you. You're coming with us. Turn around, put your hands behind your head, get on the ground, where they put a knee in your back, and torture you, twist your wrist, put the cuffs on too tight, slam you into the patrol car, and punish you physically for daring to resist them. Especially if their ego's activated, because cops, who knows what kind of roll of the dice you're going to get with a cop these days. How many people have the cops killed in America every year on average compared to, let's say, all of Europe? Look that number up. Is that really necessary? Are Americans so much more violent with the police that we require that in order to have a society? Yeah. No person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. And you say, oh, that's a criminal case. That doesn't apply on the side of the road. Well, does it? Because they're going to make a criminal case out of it, and they're going to make criminal charges. They're going to hand the ticket to you and hand the documentation to the prosecutor, and out come criminal charges, criminal case. So you don't have to answer anything. Well, if you don't answer, refusal to obey lawful order, I'm taking you to jail. You're being compelled. Sign this ticket or I'm going to take you to jail. You're being compelled. License, registration, and insurance. If you don't answer whether or not you have insurance, you're going to jail right now. That's being compelled. Do you have any of these rights under the Fifth Amendment so far? Life, liberty, and property. Life is I'll kill you if you don't comply. Liberty is I'll throw you in jail. And property is asset forfeiture. And they take all three. How often do they pay for it when they go wrong? And quite often when they do pay for it, it's through a lawsuit. And who gets... Does society benefit from that? Does anything change in their rules according to that? Or do they just pay somebody off with a bribe, several $1 million to be quiet and go away and enjoy your money on your own? Sign this non-disclosure, don't talk about it anymore. We paid you $6.8 million because we violated all this and caused you irreparable harm. Now go away and don't bring this up so the public doesn't get mad about it. We can sweep it under the rug. That's what happens. How many people say, yeah, I'll turn down the millions, give me my jury, give me the cameras, and I'm going to announce this to everybody what exactly you've done? How many people do that? Just wondering, right? It's designed to bribe people they've hurt to be quiet, and how many people want to turn away that kind of money? Due process of law. That means they're supposed to obey their own rules, right? Fair and meaningful hearings, to be informed of the cause and nature of charges and proceedings against you, the presumption of innocence, to have all these, you can question the witnesses against you, cross-examine their witnesses, due process, get all of discovery from the prosecutor. I mean, gosh, so much goes into that, right? You're not supposed to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. If you don't have due process of law, they throw you in jail, they'll give you a high bail, keep you in there. The poor people have to stay in. The rich people can bail themselves out. The rich people can hire a great lawyer. The poor people don't get any kind of quality lawyer for their case. Public defenders are, I'm not even going to go into that. Okay, that's you might as well have a prosecutor as a public defender. They're one and the same. Just give you your plea deal and pay the state. That's all they want. It's an extortion racket. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That's, I'm going to look silly for not remembering this right now. Oh, it's a term that means we can take your land to make a highway. Somebody help me out. See, I'm not perfect. It's, public domain. Public domain. They're going to take it for public domain. But does that happen? Yeah, they take people's property. We've got to use it for public domain, and yeah, we'll pay you for it, but is it just compensation? Who knows? You don't own it. They can just take it. So that happens. This is a big one. Amendment 5. The entire criminal justice system doesn't respect this whatsoever, and if you think you've got any rights in here, you're joking. I'll show you some factual evidence that'll make you just cringe. Amendment 6, in all criminal prosecutions, in all, not some, in all, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy trial. Now they've said, and public trial, they've said that somewhere around 6 months. If you start at the finish and go, I want my speedy trial, public speedy trial with the jury, public speedy trial with the jury, inside of 6 months, and they don't do it, and you bring this up, hey, this court system violated my right to a speedy trial, I want all charges dismissed, they'll laugh at you. You'll never have that happen. Now, if you're facing capital crime, a murder case, or something serious, felony assault or something like that, they'll make sure this speedy trial happens, because then the scrutiny comes down on the prosecutors. And they go, we can't be. But if you're just in traffic court, 50 miles over the speeding limit, they don't care whatsoever. You're not going to get a speedy trial whatsoever. There's, the workload, the caseload. It was your fault. You're the one who delayed. We didn't delay. You're the one who's delaying these hearings, and so it's your fault, not us. Therefore, speedy trial is null and void. So you clearly don't have that one. Public trial? I can't even record anything in there. They say we can record in public, we can record from the sidewalk, we can record from the street, but when it comes to courtrooms, can you record? No. You can't even make an audio recording, not even of your own hearings and trial. They won't let you. Why? Because that's irrefutable truth that will get out, and they don't want that spreading out throughout the internet, because they know they violate people's rights, quote-unquote rights, so many times, in so many ways, over and over and over again, that they don't want to get busted for it. They don't want to be accountable for it, and so they allow no transparency to it. And that's why I was at Tarrant County. It's one of the biggest issues. We need audio recordings in there so that they have to follow their own rules a lot more closely and try to maintain the illusion a lot more closely. And such a thing would drastically reduce their income. drastically, and they know it. They know it. It will erode public confidence in the court system as doing anything remotely close to serving and protecting society. Give me a break. So that we don't have speedy trials or public trials, because they're hidden and we can't record in there at all, to any degree. And if we order their recording, then, it's edited, it could be cut in a million pieces using only their media player that's really hard to figure out. And it costs money, by the way. It's not free like you could get on your cell phone. So there's nothing public about it. Now, again, all criminal prosecutions, the accused, all right, shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, meaning your local peers, not people they can ship in who really agree with them or being coerced by them, and they'll give the verdict the state wants. No. Jury of the state district wherein the crime shall have committed. And you can't change the rules, the lines on the map, to say you're obeying that, because which district shall have been previously ascertained by law. Alright, so the existing lines are already drawn on the map. We get a jury from within those lines. Of course, if it's a federal crime, that's not going to happen. They're going to ship you off somewhere else. A jury is supposed to be a peer, but if a peer believes in the power of the state and the religion of the state and votes, gets their paycheck by the state, gets their pension by the state, is that really any kind of fair and impartial person you want on a jury or can rely for a reasonable verdict? No, it's not. These juries are rigged against us, period. And the process of voir dire, which is the phrase that's known to be the jury selection process, is quite often way shorter than it should be because, we don't have the budget for this. We're going to make it super short. You only get like 6 questions. And they're shrinking the size of the jury from 12 down to 6 commonly. And I've even heard some courts suggest we're going to do a jury of 3. Because they know the more chances you have, the more it costs them to get the juries in there, and the more chances you have of being acquitted. If just one of them says not guilty and sticks to their guns, you're not going to be held guilty in most courts. And punished by the state in accordance with their will and their prosecutor's office. Right? So Amendment 6 is trampled all over, and I've barely begun. And to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. Boy, have you heard us say that before? Do I have a right to be informed of the cause and nature of the charges and proceedings against me? The charges is the accusation. To be confronted with the witnesses against him. So someone who's charged has the quote-unquote right to, under cross-examination, question the witnesses that are making charges against them. Now, if a prosecutor is making accusations against you on behalf of this fictional entity called the state of fill-in-the-blank, do you get to confront that prosecutor about the charges that they're making? And to be informed of the nature and cause of those charges? Absolutely not. What do you think I'm doing about the missing factual evidence of jurisdiction? They fail to provide the court whatsoever. Obviously, we don't have the right to be informed of that, because we'll be threatened with jail and thrown in jail and delayed. It costs us money. We've got a missed job to go to hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing, which, of course, is not a meaningful hearing because you're not making any progress whatsoever. It's just delay. So they violate this multiple ways, thousands, millions of times, every year in this country. It's just such a joke. It's not even funny. I can't believe anybody believes in this stuff anymore, or that they claim to have rights, or that Bill of Rights will protect them, or that these amendments are in any way applicable to 2018. Not even close. Haven't been for a long time. I think the Black's Law Dictionary came out in like 1863 or something like that. Check that out. And you have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Now, they've taken this assistance of counsel. Again, this was an issue I brought up with Tarrant County Commission Court yesterday morning. But they've taken this to mean bar members. They created this bar and said, the only way you can be assistance of counsel is if you swear allegiance to this bar membership. And in order to do that, you cannot challenge the authority of the bar. If you do, you will be disbarred. So if you go, does this court have jurisdiction? Because if not, I move for all charges to be dismissed. And I'd like to be compensated for being dragged into this court that doesn't have jurisdiction under the threat of violence. And I want the prosecutor held accountable for the legalized crime he just committed of charging me in this court with this crime when they don't provide even the evidence regarding jurisdiction. Let alone, I'm not trying to determine it. I'm not trying to look at the evidence with the jurisdiction on it to determine if it's legitimate or not. I'm just asking at this moment in time, has it even been provided? And of course it hasn't. Oh, it's a ticket. Oh, it's your driver's license. Oh, whatever. I can destroy those assertions easily with simple logic in the court of public opinion every single time. Zero problem whatsoever. I like it when they bring that up. That's how badly I embarrass them and humiliate them with their own words. All right? Let's see. So Amendment 6 is huge. It's huge. They violate it in so many ways, right? Speedy and public trial we don't have. Juries are a joke and rigged. All right? We're not informed of the cause and nature of the accusation. We don't get to confront the witnesses if the witness is the state of blank or the prosecutor making this assertion. To have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, that's subpoena power. Okay, we can subpoena people, but do we get our way all the time if we want to subpoena people? No. It's just up to a judge, as it always is. And to have the assistance of counsel, please. If it's not a bar member, you don't get it. They will allow you to sign a waiver warning you how unwise it is, and then holding you to the same standard as a person who's graduated law school and passed the bar. This really hard test they have everyone take, right? They'll hold you to that standard even though you're obviously not qualified. And then say, oh yeah, you're competent to stand trial. You're pro se. But they won't allow someone who you say, I want this person to be my assistant of counsel. I don't want him to have a bar membership. I trust that he will assist me in my best defense possible. Heck, I'll even waive my right to appeal. Just let me have this person be my assistant of counsel. And they'll say no, and we'll threaten that person with criminal charges and a felony and an arrest for practicing law without a license, without our say-so. I just don't even see how Americans ever stood up to this in the past, and because good men did nothing, now we have to deal with this mess now. And if we do nothing, our kids are going to deal with it tomorrow, and on and on and on and on and on. It's a joke. They violate the Sixth Amendment just as badly as the Fourth and the Fifth. All right, moving on to number 7. In suits at common law, oh, we all know that isn't. I mean, if anything, it's statutory law, common law, statutory law. They all have terms and meanings that go way back, and it's not within the scope of this video. I'm not going to get into it. Look it on, research it for yourself if you'd like to. Please choose credible sources only. Gosh. In suits at common law where the value and controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Now, obviously, they don't use any kind of common law, or do they even claim to. And $20 is so outweighed now, it's not even funny. Quite often, they'll deny us juries simply by reducing the charges. They tried this to me. Oh, we're going to take away your higher class misdemeanor and bring it at a lower class misdemeanor so that a jury isn't even possible. Even though we're charging with way over $20, we're threatening you with $3,000 fine and a year in jail, as in my instance. We're going to make a jury impossible so that it's decided by a judge, and because you've been pissing off all the judges for the last year, we all know how they're going to rule in this. And you might have to face that max penalty and do a year in jail at the point of a gun and destroy your entire life and come out homeless and jobless. This is what they threaten you with. So there's no right to a trial by jury even. I mean, people get so coerced by what prosecutors and defense lawyers tell them that they don't even dare do anything other than plead guilty and then take the plea deal and just submit themselves to the jurisdiction of a court absent any evidence whatsoever. And everyone on paper, if you look at the transcripts, it looks like they're voluntarily doing it. If it wasn't tragic, it'd be a joke. This is why comedy is so closely linked to tragedy. Right, Shakespeare? Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted, broken every day, all day long, in every court in this entire country. Excessive bail shouldn't be like, this is beyond the money this person has. They don't even have $1,000 to their name. I read a source recently that said half of Americans don't even have $500 cash they can produce for you right now. They live so paycheck to paycheck and are so in debt. Their net worth is negative. Excessive bail shall not be required. If someone is so impoverished that they can't afford it, it shall not be required. period. If you've got the evidence, you should be able to keep them in prison. If you don't, you've got to cut them loose until such time as factual, irrefutable evidence has been presented. You can't jail somebody with any kind of logic or ethical standard just on allegations. And then say, oh, $100,000 bail, when you know they don't have that. They know that they don't even have $10,000 for a bail bondsman. They're going to be in prison the months and months and months of delay while the court figures it out, on purpose delay, to keep the poor people in the prison because they can't fight for themselves because they're more vulnerable. Meanwhile, they get all kinds of contracts from the labor these inmates provide. And while keeping down the lower class, you go to jail, you can have mental problems, you get in fights, you can get additional criminal charges there just for defending yourself. Especially in a male prison. Like, women, you have no idea how bad a male prison can get. I don't, because I've never been in one, but good Lord, I feel more than comfortable openly asserting that male prisons are so much more violent than female prisons. It's not even the same system. And yet they require excessive bail all the time. They don't care if you don't have it. You're gonna sit there in prison. You think your lawyer's gonna do anything about it? Absolutely not. They can't do anything about it. Why? Because it's all dependent on the arbitrary will of a judge. Judges are the most powerful position in the land. Anybody who thinks it's President of the United States is just kidding themselves. Read the news. Read the various sources of news that they all agree on each other with. Okay, if everybody's saying the same thing, that thing probably happened. Like, they busted into the president's lawyer's office and searched and seized and took a bunch of stuff, and now the judges are determining what the prosecution gets to see and what they don't. They're going to give him all kinds of new evidence to hopefully trump up a bunch of more charges on Trump and destroy public's opinion of him so they can hopefully get rid of him, because he will not play ball by the bar member way. He's got his own money. You can't coerce him. He's got his own riches from his own corporations, and he doesn't need to play ball to live off. He doesn't need your pension. He can live right off happily in the sunset without you. So he's really pushing back on their will. Now, again, I'm no fan of Trump. I do not like the guy at all. All right, I'm just saying, it's funny to watch that interaction go down. So the 8th is just violated a million ways from Sunday. And so many, how many people have crimes committed against them? Brutal crimes. Because their attacker became a much more violent and desperate individual because they were held in prisons designed to inflict cruel and unusual punishments at the will of the state. And does the state ever get blamed for that? No. On follow-up crimes? No. You put a man in jail or prison for years, away from women, away from family, away from air, nature, the sun, grass under his feet, a clock, a bathroom without a toilet over it, while he has to manage and negotiate being around men, murderers, rapists, who knows what they've done? Gangs. I mean, they're not supposed to have guns and weapons in the prison, but how many do they have anyway? They're not supposed to have drugs in the prisons, but how many do they have anyway? How many of that do they turn a blind eye to, just to keep it a miserable place where cruel and unusual punishments are inflicted? Oh, it's not us doing it. It's them doing it to each other. See? They have to pay their debt to society. Do they pay anything to their victims? Absolutely not. They pay the state in time and slave camp and slave labor. I could go on and on and on about the 8th, but man, this would take a long time. Let's go to the 9th. I mean, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And number 10, the powers not delegated by the United States Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, if you read about the 9th and the 10th, they're just bookends on the first 8. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail because they don't affect what we do, in courts or the cop watchers on the street being charged with criminal charges. All right. So, yeah, this is just, I don't have anything from any of these amendments, really. They don't house their soldiers in my house in a time of war, but they don't need to. They got their own money, so that's why that's why they leave us alone there. But everything else, arbitrary will of a judge. So if you're sitting my Constitution and, oh, my Bill of Rights, and you took an oath, and you're supposed to obey, you're looking at this and then saying my common sense dictates that these amendments make common sense, and you're supposed to obey them. They clearly don't obey them to the point where they violate virtually all of them at any point in time that they want to. And the only reason why it's not even as horrible for us as it was in the past is because we're shoving live streaming cameras in their face. And that is irrefutable proof with the entire globe as your potential audience through the internet. So my fellow cop watchers, I'm about to wrap this up. If you think, oh, you know what rights are and that rights exist, they don't exist. None of these protections exist unless it's by their will. The word right is just an illusion word of salespeople to convince you, to indoctrinate you that the Constitution is legitimate, that the Bill of Rights is legitimate, that, oh, the system is good, and it's not just a bunch of madmen using violence and coercion to control populations by the millions over entire continents. It's not good for a country to last 240 years. Plus, no country has lasted that long that is currently in existence. The United States is the oldest in that way, and that's not a good thing. You're supposed to have the reset button pushed every once in a while, given our violent history. The hope is that through allowing competition and not one monopoly on power in this might makes right world, competing organizations will actually provide legitimate service through legitimate customer satisfaction goals so that they can make money by those who would like to take advantage of that service, whether it be security or education or anything that these, utilities, these traditional government services that they have monopoly on. I mean, look at the Postal Service and that history. We want choice because we want the people in power out of power, and if they don't give it to us, we're going to take it. They're not going to let you vote their power away. All right? They're not going to let you take it away without a fight. So you either fight through words or you're going to be fighting through weapons. I prefer words. That's all I've got to say. If you've got any comments about this, of course, I'm available in the comments. This concludes my video. Thank you for listening. Have a good day. All that good stuff. Take care. Bye-bye.